She was sold by her stepmother. But what the stranger did next changed everything. Welcome to our channel, where every story is a journey you won't forget. If you're enjoying this tale, we'd love to know, where in the world are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below and let's see how far this story travels. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because tomorrow's episode is something truly special. A tale of courage, love, and an unexpected twist that will stay with you long after the credits roll. Don't miss it. We'll see you there. At just 10 years old, Sophie's morning started long before the sun rose. While most children her age were still fast asleep, wrapped in warm blankets, Sophie was already out in the cold, her small hands pulling on oversized rubber boots. The wind cut through her thin jacket as she stepped outside, greeted by the quiet darkness of the Kentucky countryside. Her breath came out in small white clouds, and the dew on the grass clung to her legs as she made her way toward the barn. The farm was massive, 120 acres of land, but it felt even larger in those early hours when Sophie walked it alone. Her father, once a strong and spirited man, now spent most nights passed out in a drunken haze. He hadn't touched a milking bucket in years. Her stepmother, Ruth, rarely left the warmth of her bed before noon, unless it was to scold Sophie for something petty. So the burden of caring for the animals, nearly a dozen cows and several goats, fell entirely on Sophie's small shoulders. Each morning she filled 2 3-gallon milk pails, straining under their weight as she lifted them into a rickety little cart with wheels that squeaked and stuck in the dirt. The path to the farm gate was just over 300 feet, but it felt like miles as the cart creaked behind her. There, she'd wait for the dairy truck, which arrived promptly at 6 a.m. to collect the day's production. Rain or shine, Sophie was never late. After delivering the milk, Sophie returned to the barn, cleaned the stalls, refilled the feed, and let the animals out into the pasture. Her arms ached, her legs were tired, and her clothes smelled of hay and livestock, but she never complained. This was her normal. She was too used to it to question it anymore. Only after everything was finished did Sophie allow herself a moment to sit. She'd pour herself a small glass of milk, the only breakfast she was allowed, and drink it slowly, savoring every sip. It wasn't much, but it was something. Most days, this little cup was the only thing in her stomach until dinner time. She had exactly 25 minutes to change her clothes, wash her hands, and begin the 2.7-mile walk to school. It was the best part of her day. For a few precious hours, she wasn't the forgotten stepchild or the overworked farmhand. She was just Sophie, laughing with classmates, reading books, and dreaming of a better life. At school, she found a version of herself that didn't exist at home, free, happy, and full of wonder. But even those moments were fleeting. As the clock ticked toward afternoon, the dread crept back in. She knew what waited for her when she returned: the chores, the silence, the watchful eye of a stepmother who never saw her as a child, only as labor. And so each morning Sophie started again, boots on, heart heavy, and hope quietly flickering in the background. Sophie's routine never changed, until one morning, something did. It started with a flicker. A faint glow at the top of the hill caught her eye as she hauled the milk cart toward the gate. She paused, squinting in the dim pre-dawn light. Atop the ridge stood the old Victorian mansion, silent, crumbling, and abandoned since before she was born. Locals always said it was haunted, a place cursed with dark history. Sophie never dared to go near it. But now there was light, soft and steady, shining from a second-floor window. She tried to shake it off. Maybe it was her imagination, or maybe the moonlight had bounced off the glass just right. But as the days passed, the signs grew clearer. Strange vehicles began pulling into the gravel driveway, delivery vans, moving trucks, even a sleek black car with tinted windows. Workers came and went, their voices echoing faintly across the valley as they repainted the walls and patched the roof. Every morning as Sophie trudged past the property with her squeaky cart, she noticed more change. Flower beds were being restored, fences were repainted, Curtains appeared in windows that had long been boarded up. And each morning, without fail, that same warm light appeared just as she passed by. Then, one morning, as she bent to pick up a fallen pale lid, Sophie felt something different. Eyes. She looked up sharply and froze. In the upstairs window of the mansion, silhouetted behind sheer curtains, stood a tall figure. A man. He didn't move, didn't wave, didn't blink. He simply watched her. The hair on Sophie's arms stood up. She quickly looked away and hurried back to the barn. But the image of that figure lingered in her mind. Who was he? And why was he watching her? Over the next few days, the pattern repeated. The figure was always there, always at the same window, always watching. Sophie tried to ignore it. She kept her head down, moved faster, even changed her route. But curiosity gnawed at her. The mansion, once a place of fear, was now filled with life and mystery. It didn't help that her stepmother, Ruth, had suddenly become interested in the mansion. 2. She began gossiping with neighbors about the rich man on the hill. She made Sophie deliver baskets of washed linens and clean towels to the mansion's front gate, though she never let her go further than the iron fence. Sophie couldn't help but wonder. What kind of person moves into a ghost house, never speaks, and stares out the window each morning at a girl carrying milk? It was unsettling. But more than that, it was a sign. Something was shifting in Sophie's world. The routine she had clung to for comfort was cracking, and behind that window, someone was watching. Not with anger, not with cruelty, but with purpose. And Sophie was about to find out exactly what that purpose was. The days grew colder, but the chill Sophie felt had nothing to do with the weather. Ever since she noticed the man in the window, she'd felt a strange unease. His presence was constant, silent, still, and focused entirely on her. She didn't know his name, what he wanted, or why he kept watching. And yet, deep down, something told her that whatever was coming, it would begin with him. One morning, just as Sophie was about to leave the barn, disaster struck. She tripped over a loose board and dropped her milk pail. The white liquid splashed across the dusty floor, soaking into the earth. She froze, panic rising in her chest. That milk wasn't just food. It was money. Her stepmother would be furious, and Ruth was. She stormed out of the house, robe flapping in the wind, voice like a whip. "You clumsy little brat. That was today's breakfast and tomorrow's sale. You think we can afford your mistakes?" Sophie stood in silence, trembling. Her stepmother's eyes narrowed with disgust. "No milk for you today. And guess what? No school either. You just earned yourself a full day of chores." Her heart sank. School was Sophie's only escape, the one place where she could forget the shadows of her home and pretend to be normal. But not today. "You're going to wash every piece of laundry in that basket?" Ruth snapped, dragging a heavy bin to Sophie's feet. "Towels, linens, dresses, all of it, and you better hurry. He's coming this afternoon to pick them up." Sophie didn't have to ask who he was. It was the man from the mansion, the one who watched her every morning, the one Ruth seemed eager to impress. But why? As Sophie scrubbed clothes in the icy water, her fingers raw and red, she thought about what her stepmother had said. This wasn't just a chore. It was a delivery. Ruth was trying to make a connection with him. The hours passed. The sun climbed high, and Sophie kept working, her small hands moving mechanically through fabric and soap. When she hung the clothes to dry, a gust of wind blew one of the dresses toward the mansion's direction. It caught on a fence post, fluttering like a white flag. Sophie retrieved it, glancing up toward the hill, and there he was. The man. Watching, not from the window this time, but from the front porch. Closer. He didn't wave, didn't speak. But there was something different in his gaze, something more urgent. That night, Sophie overheard Ruth speaking in hushed tones outside with him. She crept to the window, heart pounding. The voices were sharp, heated. "If you want the girl," Ruth said coldly, "make me an offer." Sophie's breath caught in her throat. Had she heard that right? Her stepmother wasn't just working for the man. She was selling her. And the worst part, he didn't say no. Sophie pressed her ear to the cracked window pane, heart hammering in her chest. The cold from the glass seeped into her skin. But she didn't move, not when the words outside cut through the silence like a knife. If you want the girl, make me an offer. Her stepmother's voice was calm, calculated, as if Sophie were nothing more than a piece of property, something to be traded and tossed away. A chill ran down Sophie's spine that had nothing to do with the cold, and then came the response. Deep, measured. The man from the mansion didn't hesitate. I'll pay for the girl, and the land, all of it. Sophie's breath caught. She stumbled back from the window, hands trembling. This couldn't be real. She had known her stepmother was cruel, but this? Selling her to a stranger? The rest of the conversation blurred into noise. Numbers were exchanged. Terms were agreed on. Her stepmother laughed, actually laughed, at the size of the offer. Sophie's father, silent for most of the exchange, suddenly appeared, glassy-eyed and grinning. He had no questions, no concern, just excitement over the cash. They shook hands. The deal was sealed. The man, Mr. Everett, promised to return in 2 days with the paperwork and payment. And just like that, Sophie's fate was no longer her own. The next 48 hours moved in slow motion. Sophie moved like a ghost through the house, ignored and invisible as her stepmother packed up everything they owned. Her father, too drunk to stand, straight, kept muttering about moving to Florida, maybe buying a boat. Sophie stayed quiet, careful not to show what she knew. But inside she was falling apart. Questions raced through her mind. Who was this man? Why would he buy a child? What, Doug? Would he do once he had her? She'd heard horror stories, kids vanishing, being used, being hurt, and now she was one of them. On the second morning, a black pickup truck rolled up the dirt path, its tires crunching gravel under the weight of inevitability. Mr. Everett stepped out dressed in a dark coat, holding a leather envelope under one arm. Sophie's parents didn't even try to act discreet. Her father signed the papers without reading them. Ruth counted the bills aloud with a smile on her face. Pleasure doing business, she said, and then they were gone. No goodbye, no last glance, just the creak of the wagon wheels as they disappeared down the road, free of their burden. Mr. Everett turned to Sophie, his voice softer than she expected. It's just you and me now. She didn't speak, didn't cry. She stood frozen, staring at the empty space where her family had been. Whatever came next, she had no choice but to face it. And with that, she stepped into the truck, leaving behind the only life she'd ever known, uncertain of the one she was walking into. The ride to the mansion was quiet. Sophie sat in the passenger seat, her small hands clenched in her lap, staring out the window as the truck rumbled up the winding hill. She didn't know whether how to feel fear, anger, or just numb. Her family had sold her like livestock, and now she was heading into the very place she'd always feared, the mansion on the hill. The one people whispered about, the one with the man who never stopped watching. But as they pulled into the driveway, something caught her off guard. The house wasn't what she expected. The peeling paint had been redone. The front porch was lined with flower pots and wind chimes that danced in the soft breeze. The yard was neatly trimmed, and warm light poured from every window. It didn't feel haunted, it felt lived in. Mr. Everett stepped out and opened her door. "Come on in," he said gently. "There's someone I want you to meet." Inside, the air was warm and filled with the scent of vanilla and something baking. Sophie followed him through a sunlit hallway, past shelves filled with books and photos, until they reached a cozy living room. A woman sat in an armchair by the fireplace, wrapped in a soft quilt. Her hair was pale blonde and tucked behind her ears. She looked up, her smile as kind as sunlight. "This is my wife, Clara," Mr. Everett said softly. Sophie stood frozen. She'd seen some of Clara's clothes while doing laundry and had guessed a woman lived there, but never imagined meeting her like this. Clara looked at her with eyes full of understanding. "We've been waiting to meet you, sweetheart." Sophie's voice trembled. "Why did you buy me?" Mr. Everett knelt down to her level. "Sophie," he said, "I didn't buy you to work. I saw you every morning. I saw how hard you worked, how no one helped you, how no one loved you the way a child should be loved." He paused, glancing toward his wife. "We can't have children, and when Ruth offered to leave you behind, it broke something in me. I couldn't let you stay there. I had the chance to give you something better." Sophie's throat tightened. "So I don't have to do chores?" He laughed softly. "Not unless you want to." Clara extended a hand. "We want you to be our daughter, Sophie, if you'll let us." For a moment, the silence hung heavy. Then Sophie stepped forward, slow and unsure, but drawn to the warmth in Clara's voice. And when she felt those arms wrap around her, gentle and safe, everything she'd been holding in, the fear, the hurt, the loneliness, came pouring out in tears. In that embrace, Sophie didn't feel like someone bought and abandoned. She felt chosen, protected, home. She would go to school again. She would have bedtime stories. She would be loved, not because she was useful, but because she was herself. For the first time, Sophie was no longer surviving. She was living. This story might have touched something deep inside you. Maybe it reminded you of someone you knew growing up, or perhaps it stirred memories of moments when life felt unfair. But somehow, hope still found a way in. If Sophie's journey moved you, we'd love to hear from you in the comments. What part of her story stood out to you the most? Was it the silent strength she carried each day, the cruelty she endured, or the unexpected kindness that changed everything? Take a moment to share your thoughts, your emotions, or even your own story if you feel comfortable. We're building a community where voices matter, where stories are shared not just to be heard, but to be felt. And while you're here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. Tomorrow's episode brings another unforgettable journey, filled with heartbreak, courage, and redemption. You won't want to miss it, so go ahead, leave us a comment. Whether you write one word or a whole paragraph, your voice could be the one that lifts someone else today. We're listening, we're here, and together we keep the story going.